Good evening. If you're not really into electronics, designing or otherwise, this video would be quite irrelevant to your life. And I hope you have a nice day. So if you're still sticking around, in this video I would be going over the websites of, uh, of a few big electronics manufacturing companies like Analog Devices, Texas Instruments, Nordic, Maxim. Yeah, you get the idea. So specifically, I would be going over the product selection tables inside their websites because that is one of the most important sections in their websites from a designer's point of view or an engineer's point of view, because that is where the companies list all their present offerings, all the present ICs and the components they are manufacturing and selling in a tabular format. And they also mention certain salient features regarding the components. And these salient features help a designer to go through the components and understand basically what that component offers and make a selection and select the components which are suitable for his or her design. So over here we can see a product selection table from ST Microelectronics. I'm looking under the stepper motor driver section. It doesn't really matter in this video because the table is of main concern. You can see on the first column there are several products, and row wise there are salient features mentioned for each product. So a designer can read all these text and select. Let's say he or she has narrowed it down to 2 products, and they will go into the product's web page. And yes, every product has their own web page, and then go into the data sheet or download the data sheet, which I have done over here. So the data sheet would start from the top, obviously, and then the designer, in most cases, not for all components, but for most components, designers mainly look for block diagrams like these, or they look for general circuit implementations, which are schematic diagrams of a circuit where a very general implementation of that IC is shown. And as you can see, it takes a lot of time to go through the datasheet and scan the datasheet and arrive at the circuit implementation, which is this one. And this is a pictorial representation of what the component is, what peripherals it can support, or how it can interface with other components. And basically you get an idea of how you can or cannot fit this component in your specific design. And as we all know that brains can process pictures much better than text, because text cognition or text comprehension is really a derived form of picture comprehension. So whichever manufacturer involves some sort of a pictorial representation in their tables would be much more preferred by the designers, because in a table which has pictorial representations rather than text, which takes a long time to read and go through, if there are a number of components and there are a lot of fields like RDS on, supply voltage, output current, and so on. If a company has pictorial representations, then it would be a much faster process scanning through their offerings, their product selection table, and selecting the component or the suitable component. So this was ST Microelectronics. This is now we are in Maxim Integrated. This is a really similar product selection table, nothing really going on, just a passive table and a filter on the left hand side. Now Nordic does not really have a product selection table. They have a matrix kind of portfolio. But there's a good thing that the text are easy to read because of the large font and the clear font. So it would not be so tiring reading the text, but still they could have made better use of this area. They could have had a block diagram or a general circuit implementation shown over here rather than a package diagram, which is not really important or doesn't really transfer much value to the designer, because the designer already knows what a BGA package looks like and what can be expected from these kind of packages. All right, now we are in Corvo. Again, the same thing. They have a datasheet link, but nothing really interesting going on. There's just text and formatted in a tabular format. Now we are in Texas Instruments. Well, this has a good filter on the left hand side, much better than the other companies, and there's a lot of things going on, but if you strip it down to the very basics, you would find that it is very similar to the other ones as well, and there's nothing really intelligent going on in this table, and nothing really nothing. They're doing nothing to help the designer make a faster selection and go through their components faster. All right, now the best one. This is analog devices. They have really nailed it down with their product selection tables, and designers love analog devices for it. They have, firstly, and this is not the important one. Firstly, they have integrated the filter, and they have moved it from the left-hand side of the screen to the columns itself, and they have integrated it with the table, which is really nice and really intuitive to work with. But the best part is this one. They have an active pop-up window whenever you hover over a specific component, and in the pop-up window there is a one-line description of what the component is, a datasheet link, purchase link, but the most interesting thing is a picture. All right, that goes away. A picture of the block diagram, a pictorial representation of that component, either a block diagram or a general circuit implementation. And as I mentioned, oftentimes that is what the engineer or the designer is looking in a specific data sheet. So yeah, I mean, when a designer is selecting a component and when he wants to know whether that component fits his or her design or not, the first thing they look for is the general circuit or circuit implementations, block diagrams, and to understand how the pins are laid out and what pin does what, and the physical parts of the component, and that cannot be understood without a long process of derivation from the text which they give on the product selection table, like these texts. And this is, as you can see, there's a direct circuit implementation of that component, and you can understand at a glance how it is interacting with other components in the circuit. This is really beautiful, and I find myself spending the least amount of time in analog devices product selection table, but selecting more number of analog devices components, and that is really a win for both of us, because as a designer, my time should be spent in doing the boring stuff, making the PCB footprint libraries, making the schematic libraries, designing the PCB artwork or making the schematics and everything. I mean, not the ultra boring stuff, which is selecting components. And I'm not kidding, selecting components really takes a lot of time. I mean, hours, days, and dare I not say weeks. Yeah, trust me, it takes weeks for certain designs. I mean, if you have to really narrow it down and find the perfect component for your application, it sometimes takes weeks. Yeah, indeed it does. All right, so I think and I want every other electronics manufacturing company product selection table to have a feature like this. I mean, maybe not like this. I mean, that would be ripping off analog devices, but some sort of pictorial representation and implementation of a graphical graphical depiction of what that product is. And they actually have no excuse of not putting it there. I mean, why don't they have it? I mean, it's 2020, not like uh, 2005. All right, that was all I had to say in this video. Yeah, have a nice day. Goodbye.